How may I help you?
What are your thoughts about the others in the Inquisition?
I admire Cassandra's determination. If she had a little charm, she could be a remarkable leader. Did you need something, darling?
I wanted to ask you about the Circle of Magi.
Of course. What do you wish to know?
If the Circle disbanded, how can you still belong to it?
The Circle is an idea, my dear. And an idea cannot be dissolved. Many of the first enchanters voted for rebellion, caring little that anything short of a unanimous decision would pit mage against mage. Rather than dissolving it, Grand Enchanter Fiona's vote split the Circle in two. The rebels follow her, the loyalists follow me.
If you led all the loyalists, why are you only First Enchanter and not Grand Enchanter?
Grand Enchanters are elected, and since there are no First Enchanters besides myself, no vote can be held. I could name myself Grand Enchanter, but the title holds no meaning now. When the circles are restored, that will change.
What was it like to live in a circle?
My dear, your question is the root of all problems with mages. I cannot tell you. Every circle was different. Their Templars were different, their politics unique. And every person within each tower had an experience of circle life unique to themselves. Some people suffered and some were content. Some were cruel, some compassionate, and some indifferent. The same is true of people everywhere, in all circumstances, whether they are mages or not.
So tell me about your personal experience with the Circle.
I enjoyed life in the Montsimard Circle, my dear. It was an edifice devoted to knowledge and refinement. And mages need the company of other mages. No one else can truly understand the challenges we face, nor see the world as we do.
You must have been under constant supervision, being forced by Templars to live in the tower. Was that hard to endure?
My dear, I have a suite in the palace and a wing at my dear Duke Bastien's estate. I've never been forced to live anywhere. Most circles allowed mages to live away from the tower, either on their own or in service to the nobility. All that was required was permission from the First Enchanter. Some circles were harsher in their restrictions. Kirkwall was the worst, but it was the exception. Most were quite permissive. Perhaps too permissive, in retrospect.
How did we come to this state with the circles in revolt?
A failure of perspective that infected Circle leadership. Mages lived solely in a world of Templars and mages. They could not even imagine what was beyond the tower walls. Kirkwall gave the world a reason to remember its fear of magic. A mage killed hundreds with a snap of their fingers. Across Thedas, a new tangible fear of magic grew. Commoners and nobles alike called out to the Chantry for protection. But the malcontents in the towers thought nothing of this. They cared only for themselves and for their anger at the new Templar restrictions. When a mage attempted to assassinate Divine Justinia, again, the mages protested the investigation. The leadership chose to vote on independence based on the intolerable conditions imposed by the Templars, sparing no thought to the fact that magic was more feared in the aftermath of these attacks than it had been since Tevinter's day. So long as they had their freedom, they could care little for riots, angry mobs, or about pitting mages against each other.
Are you familiar with Grand Enchanter Fiona?
We've met. Before her horrendously ill-timed and selfish vote for independence, I thought her adequate at her job. In her dotage, she could not handle looking after the well-being of so many people. We would have done better to replace her years ago, to let her spend time gardening.
Did they have cause to rebel?
In the aftermath of their terrorist attacks? Was that really the most opportune time to break away? By all means, protest abuses by the Templars. Just don't do it in a way that says mages support wholesale murder. By voting when they did, My colleagues all but declared war upon the ordinary people of Thedas. A war in which we are outnumbered 100 to 1.
I thought the fighting was only between mages and Templars. Why are mages fighting mages?
The vote for independence was carried by only a small margin, but Fiona chose to let the motion stand. Those who opposed a rash declaration of war against the entire free world had little choice. By breaking from the Chantry when they did, the rebels declared themselves in support of mass murder. Anyone who did not wish to support terrorism and the slaughter of innocents was forced to take arms against the rebels. How may I help you?
I wanted to ask you about the Circle of Magi.
Of course. What do you wish to know?
You must have an opinion of the Templars after living so long in the Circle.
Having opinions about Templars, my dear, is exactly like having opinions about mages or Navarans or men. I have known some who were impossible to endure and some who were utterly charming. I have suffered insults at the hands of those in the armor, but no more than I endured from nobles or tradesmen in Val Royaux. Personally, I have found the Templars a useful tool, skilled at keeping more unpleasant elements at bay. Do you need something, my dear?
I'd like to know more about you, Madame Vivienne.
Whatever would you like to know?
Your accent's not Orlesian. Where exactly are you from?
I am from the Circle, my dear. One's country of origin rarely matters there. But if you must know, I was born in Wycombe in the Free Marches. I was sent to the Ostwick Circle, but I transferred to Monsignor while still an apprentice.
I'm curious how a Circle mage winds up a courtier.
Nobody winds up at court, my dear. It takes a great deal of effort to arrive there. I caught the eye of Duke Bastien de Ghislaine, an advantageous connection that opened many doors. When the position of Enchanter to the Imperial Court became vacant, I was able to secure it.
You're married to the Duke de Ghislaine?
Of course not, my dear. Don't be ridiculous. Marriage is the business of alliance and inheritance. I'm Bastien's mistress.
And what does the Duchess de Ghislaine think of this arrangement?
We got along quite well. Duchess Nicoline and I used to host musical salons together. She was a great patron of the arts. She passed away from a fever a few years ago, the poor dear.
What duties does a court enchanter have?
I am tasked with providing assistance to the Empress on arcane matters. Most of my predecessors restricted this to lighting lamps and doing parlor tricks. In such troubled times as these, however, I provide political advice to Her Majesty on the subject of the Mage Rebellion.
Do you think that you and I might someday...
My dear, you are delightful, but that's quite impossible. It is the whisper in the night, the lie upon your sleep.
Draw your last breath, my friends. and all the stars in the sky rest at the Maker's right hand.
I understand you
And
were
be
instrumental
forgiven.
in garnering the assistance of the Templars. It is well done. And I pray this Inquisition fares better than the Chantry in its handling of magic.
You disapprove of something the Chantry did. Are you allowed to do that?
That largely depends upon one's company. While surrounded by those declared heretics already, I am safe enough. In some ways, Andraste had the simpler task. Magic should serve man, and not rule over him. That tells us what should be, but it does not tell us how to get there. So many times the methods of men have undone the spirit of their goals. Once you have sealed the breach, we shall see whether this Inquisition is truer to the Chantry, or its own namesake.
Do you know who the Grand Clerics will choose as the next Divine?
It is a difficult decision. All the obvious candidates perished with Divine Justinia at the Conclave. The Grand Clerics are terrified of the Inquisition. They will not decide soon, and I fear they will not decide wisely. Whoever is chosen needs the Inquisition's support. No one else seems likely to seal the breach.
How are the people doing after what happened at the Conclave?
They are scared, of course. Many have lost homes or loved ones. I doubt many will sleep well until you have sealed the breach. I have offered what help I can. The rest is for the Inquisition. What more do you wish to know?
How are the villagers in Haven doing?
You did well to gain the Templars to your cause. The people have hope that the breach may be sealed. Some of them are returning to the lives they fled. Others are starting fresh. In either case, they no longer believe the world as they know it is ending.
What are you doing to help these people?
My sisters and I have been tending to the injured as best we are able. Some refugees come with food, while others arrive empty-handed. I have helped ensure that all have enough to eat. Beyond that, many simply wish the familiar comfort of the Chant of Light. It is little enough work to offer some comfort to those in pain.
Do you have information on people elsewhere?
You have done much for the refugees in the hinterlands. Many who would have starved or frozen owe you their lives. Villagers in Crestwood are besieged by their own dead. They have sent word begging for assistance. People are vanishing in the hills of Emprise de Lyon. It may be demons or something worse, but they are terrified. More than that I cannot say. It is a chaotic time for all in Olay and Ferelden.
Farewell, revered mother.
Make her go with you. Greetings, Herald of Andraste.
I don't believe I've had the chance to speak candidly with the revered mother. Can you tell me about the Chantry?
Of course. Too many think that the Chant of Light should only be sung by humans. The truth is that knowledge of the Maker and Andraste should be open to all who wish to learn of him. We believe the Maker created us, and that mankind's sinful nature caused him to turn away. With Andraste's blessing, the Maker will forgive mankind once the Chant of Light is sung from all corners of this world.
What is your stance on magic?
Andraste put it simply. Magic must serve man, not rule over him. However, those words must be put into the proper historical context. Andraste led a rebellion against the Tevinter Imperium, whose magisters controlled most of the world at the time. Even then, she never called for all mages to be put to death. She believed in peaceful coexistence.
I don't recall the Chantry being as tolerant of magic as you describe.
No. The Chantry is an imperfect vessel, pulled in every direction by those who would steer its course. Yet the Templars rebelled precisely because Divine Justinia was not restrictive enough. Perhaps the Inquisition will find a better way.
Why does the Chantry allow only human women to become priestesses?
The official doctrine is that elves and dwarves have turned further from the Maker than humanity. And as for men, the chant holds that they are more vulnerable to anger or passion. But in truth, it is simply political. Added after Andraste's death, like too many of our beliefs.
If you don't believe these restrictions are what Andraste wanted, why haven't you tried to change them?
Has the current state of the world not taught you the folly of fighting too many battles at once? I chose to use what power I had to help peasants forgotten by the nobles of Orlais. I believed there would be time to address their inequality under the Chantry once we had saved them from starving.
There were calls for an exalted march to put down the Mage Rebellion. What was your opinion?
It was ignorant gossip. An exalted march only succeeds when it carries the will of the people. Even then, it cannot be undertaken lightly. People are too easily frightened. We cannot destroy everything they fear. An exalted march is justified only against a true threat to this whole world. It is an offense to the Maker to use it as a political bludgeon, or as a means of spreading the chant of light.
What about the exalted march that conquered the elves?
That is a hotly debated matter in some circles of the Chantry. The elves had conquered Montsemard and threatened Val Royeaux itself. They were not helpless victims. But even then, Orlais was the only nation to provide troops. It was hardly an exalted march of all the faithful. The Maker wishes his world to spread by example, not by war. We win no converts with blood.
Farewell, revered mother.
Farewell. I greet you.
Can you tell me about the original Inquisition?
The original Inquisition was formed after the First Blight, well before the Chantry as we know it. The Inquisitors were hunters, zealots, who tracked and killed cultists and dangerous mages. As Andraste rose to power, the Inquisition came into her service. Instead of hunting those who would do harm, the Inquisitors spread the chant of light by force.
No wonder everyone is so nervous around us. Who chose that name?
Divine Justinia herself. I understand that this was not a popular decision. In any case, once the chant of light had spread far and wide, there was less need for zealots. The Inquisitors became the seekers of truth, and eventually the Templars.
This is a dark chapter of history for the Divine to revisit.
Do you know what impresses me most about the original Inquisition? They fought horrific battles, killed and died for their cause, and when it was time, they put their swords away. Perhaps the name was Divine Justinia's message, that when the Inquisition is needed, it will strike without mercy. But when its work is done, it will put its sword away.
Farewell, revered mother.
Until next time.
The apothecary would like to know why you need so much death root.
To do my job.
Oh, I'll just tell him that, Enchanter.
I'm not an enchanter, I'm an apprentice. Just please tell Adal I need that death root.
What may I do for you?
How do you and Leliana know each other?
We moved through similar circles in Orlais. I believe we actually met in Val Royeaux. Leliana was quite an accomplished player of the game by then.
What exactly do you mean when you say the game?
Forgive me. The game refers to the slow duels of influence among the noble and powerful of Orlais. It's a rather light-hearted name for the matter, but Orlesians are fond of playful touches.
What business are the Montiliers in exactly?
We began as merchants. My ancestors founded the first trade routes to Rivail. We once sent entire fleets across the waking sea.
But not anymore.
No. These days, our vessels are a touch more modest.
What did you do before coming here?
I had the great honor of serving Antiva's crown as ambassador to Orlais. I'm also first in line to become the head of House Montilier, though my siblings attend to our mercantile affairs.
How strong are your past loyalties?
I would never have given up my position if I did not intend to fully commit to the Inquisition. We cannot fall back on borders. Antiva is as threatened as any country by the rebellions. If anything, the alliances I forged there may help our current cause.
Do you think the Inquisition will continue after we seal the breach?
If we prove ourselves by healing the breach, people may turn to us for other things. Protection, counsel, justice. The Inquisition offered these once to those in need.
Tell me, do you believe I was saved by Andraste at the Temple of Sacred Ashes?
I should much like to believe so, Your Worship. The miracles Andraste performed were so long ago, they're difficult to picture. If it were truly her and the Fate who saved you... Well, in any case, many already believe you walk in the Maker's light.
Let's speak later.
Another time. Good day to you.
What exactly does your job entail?
I meet with ambassadors from various factions and countries, and cement alliances with them. We are a young cause. Diplomacy is essential to our credibility.
Then you speak for the Inquisition with these nobles?
I do. Someone must foster goodwill on our behalf, as well as prevent controversy as news of us spreads.
How heavily are our actions scrutinized?
Make no mistake, every noble house, every throne is waiting to see what the Inquisition does next. Many are willing to pledge support, if offers are made in just the right fashion. I intend to see that they are.
Tell me how you came to work for the Inquisition again.
I'd been considering leaving my post in Antiva for a new challenge when Leliana recruited me. There's such unrest in Thedas, and the Inquisition seems a promising method to stop it. It's to everyone's benefit if we prevent the Mage-Templar conflict from spreading further.
So was it the prospect of stability that drew you here?
The full impact of the Mage Rebellion has yet to be felt, and that was before the death of the Divine. The violence must be curbed before we see it turn to full-scale war.
I can only imagine the bloodshed if it escalates further.
I'm afraid history holds many examples of what will happen if it does.
What do the people make of us?
We've gathered many favors among the nobility. They will be gently reminded of this.
Any visiting dignitaries I should watch out for?
Lady Drummond promised a visit. She has useful resources if we can get her to set aside her games.
What are her politics?
Oh, no, I meant actual games. Chess, cards, dice, little boards with carved idols from Tevinter. She made me play that with her for 8 hours once. Steer her towards cards, if she insists on a match.